Hillary Lane is here with the potential dangers to students when no nurse is available. Hillary, good morning.
John, good morning. The role of the school nurse is more critical than ever, with a quarter of all young children suffering some kind of chronic illness like asthma and diabetes.
Here at LaGuardia Airport, the tarmac got so crowded there was eventually a ground stop. That meant the airport was temporarily closed to flights heading here from other cities. In describing his views on Kavanaugh, President Trump said he too has been falsely accused. The mayor of Pittsburgh called Saturday the darkest day in the city's history, but says the answer is not putting an armed guard in every house of worship. The remaining 8 victims will be buried in the next few days. It's tradition for Jews to be buried as soon as possible, but because of the investigation, the families had to wait several days. Just up the coast in Panama City Beach, Hurricane Michael leveled this family-owned shopping center.
Eating while working is actually good for some people, driving the energy back into their work while also helping them focus. But that's not the case for everyone.
Actor Robert De Niro was another target of one of the packages. Police say it was sent to his production studio right here in the Tribeca neighborhood of Manhattan. Experts are reminding everyone to be careful while handling raw turkey in the kitchen. That begins by thawing in the refrigerator and not on the counter. Here in Panama City Beach, the wind and rain have been brutal all day. At points, it's hard to stand up straight. Officials say former President Bill Clinton is at home, but Mrs. Clinton is not. She's campaigning for Democrats in Florida. Authorities announced murder charges Thursday in last week's deadly mansion fire in New Jersey. Prosecutors say 51-year-old Paul Canero killed his younger brother Keith, Keith's wife, and the couple's 2 young children before setting their home on fire.
The defendant repeatedly shot and killed his brother while he was outside of the side of his home, and then moved to murder the rest of the family inside the home. We allege that Jennifer was shot and stabbed, and the 2 Canero children were repeatedly stabbed by knife.
Paul Canero has been in custody since he was charged last week with arson for setting his own house on fire on the same day while his family was asleep. They escaped unharmed. Prosecutors say Canero started the fire here at his brother's mansion to cover up the murders. They say he then removed some evidence, went back to his own home, and set the fire there.
That fire was effectively a ruse designed to make it appear as if the overall Canero family was somehow targeted.
The brothers were business partners in a computer company and a pest control company.
We believe that the defendant's motive was financial in nature, stemming from his and the victim's joint business ventures.
Paul Canero has a court appearance Friday. He faces life in prison if convicted. Hillary Lane, CBS News, Colts Neck, New Jersey.
Day 4 of our School Matters series this week, we examine what some are calling a growing national crisis, the shortage of school nurses. Only 3 out of 5 schools across the country have full-time school nurses. This often forces school administrators with no medical training to step in and provide some level of care. Hillary Lane is here with the potential dangers to students when no nurse is available. Hillary, good morning.
John, good morning. The role of the school nurse is more critical than ever, with a quarter of all young children suffering some kind of chronic illness like asthma and diabetes. Over the past several years, multiple children have died after facing medical emergencies in their schools when no nurse was on duty. Parents and nurse advocates now want to see that changed.
Did the school district fail your child?
And they failed him always. Like, they weren't there to help him.
Last October, Rasheen Presley's 9-year-old son, Hassan, collapsed in the school cafeteria. He was rushed to the hospital where he was later pronounced dead of heart failure.
What went through your mind in those last moments?
It was my only son. There wasn't nobody there to help him. Nothing.
There was no school nurse on duty that day. According to a Philadelphia school district official, staff certified in CPR tried to revive Hassan, who'd been born with a heart defect. It's unknown had a school nurse been there that day if they would have been able to save Rasheen's son.
Do you think things would have been different if there was a school nurse there that day?
I think so. Never know.
Kareem Presley is the boy's uncle.
It's the hardest. You just gotta be tough. It hurt me because he's not here.
Did Miss Millie talk to you before?
There are no federal laws regulating school nurse staffing, but the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends at least one registered nurse in every school, a standard many districts are failing to meet.
That is a crisis.
Donna Mazik, the executive director of the National Association of School Nurses, says 40% of schools across the country don't have a full-time nurse, and 25% don't have a nurse at all.
Is that acceptable?
It's not acceptable. Students deserve what they need in order to be in school and ready to learn.
Mazik blames shrinking budgets for the shortfall, which she says increases the burden on existing nurses and puts kids at risk.
If you have a workload that doesn't enable you to care for the students in the way they need, it's like drinking water from a fire hose.
So now time for school number 2.
Yes, we'll go to Bushy Park, my elementary school.
Deanie Gorby-Crease is a school nurse in Howard County, Maryland, who covers 2 schools a day.
I'm often stressed because I have to figure out the safest way to balance it.
She has health assistants at each school who call her with questions when she's not in the building.
If I'm busy with an emergency at my other school, I'm not available right away, so it might delay their care some.
As a school nurse, do you feel like you're stretched too thin?
I think so. I would love to be able to be in one place so that I could provide the care that the kids need. I also think that I would get to know the kids a lot better.
Look at my nose.
In Cincinnati, Ohio, where nurses were also sometimes covering more than one school, they're tackling the problem through a partnership with Cincinnati Children's Hospital.
We now are able to provide routine primary care services for all of the students in the building as well as any child in the community.
They've opened health centers in schools to close the gap.
So students get services here no different than they do in a pediatrician's office.
In the wake of his son's death, Rasheen Presley says schools must find a way to provide care for all students.
If you ain't got no nurses at the school, you might as well teach your kids at home. That's just common sense.
The Philadelphia School District is working with a local hospital to determine if and what kind of additional health support is needed in the schools. And next month, a bill will be reintroduced in Washington called the Nurse Act. It would provide grants for schools to hire nurses.
Good. Our priorities need to change. This is an issue.
Heart goes out to the Presleys. Listen, they said, listen, we don't know if the nurse would have made a difference, but at least you would have known everything would have been done to help them try.
Thank you.
That's what's so upsetting.
They say a school nurse just should have been there.
Exactly.
In the kitchen at her restaurant in Syracuse, New York, Clara Cedeno is working to fulfill a childhood dream.
I'm keeping it together in this moment, but yeah, there have been a lot of tears shed, a lot of stress. This is everything for me.
She quit her job in tech to open the Latin American restaurant La Patria just 2 months ago.
Here you go, ladies.
She was expecting a loan from the Small Business Administration, but because of the government shutdown, no new applications are being processed. She says she is 1 week away from not having enough money to pay her food suppliers.
And if I can't feed my customers, then I have no customers. And if I get no customers, I can't pay my staff. And if I have no staff, there is no business.
With no end to the shutdown in sight, Cedeno is talking with her bank about alternatives.
There's that fear of letting the people down that work for me. It's the fear of letting the people down that are rooting for me.
Cedeno's customers say it's sad to see a local business struggling because of the shutdown.
It's disappointing to hear. You know, I mean, you want your local businesses to flourish.
What is your message from Syracuse, New York to lawmakers in Washington, D.C.?
We're the ones who keep our communities alive and breathing every day because we show up every day. And if we don't have, you know, the funding is like oxygen for us, right? And if we don't have that oxygen, then we die off.
Even when the government is fully funded, Cedeno is worried there will be a backlog at the Small Business Administration, further delaying the loan she needs to keep the doors open. Hillary Lane, CBS News, Syracuse, New York. The city of Pittsburgh is mourning the victims of what's thought to be the deadliest attack on a Jewish group in U.S. history.
Members of the Tree of Life Synagogue, conducting a peaceful service in their place of worship, were brutally murdered by a gunman targeting them simply because of their faith.
On Saturday, a gunman killed 11 members of the synagogue's congregation. The victims ranged in age from 54 to 97 and included a pair of brothers, as well as a couple who had been married over 60 years. The suspect, 46-year-old Robert Bowers, was arrested after being wounded in a shootout with police. He's now facing 11 counts of murder.
During the course of his deadly assault on the people of the synagogue, Bowers made statements regarding genocide and his desire to kill Jewish people.
The Justice Department is treating the shooting as a hate crime and may seek the death penalty. The mayor of Pittsburgh called Saturday the darkest day in the city's history, but says the answer is not putting an armed guard in every house of worship.
The approach that we need to be looking at is how we take the guns, which is the common denominator of every mass shooting in America, out of the hands of those that are looking to express hatred through murder.
The victims were remembered before the Steelers-Browns game on Sunday. One fan hung a banner that showed the Star of David, along with the Hebrew word for peace, shalom. Hillary Lane, CBS News, Pittsburgh.